Hey everyone, this is another episode of Darshan Talks, and this month's theme, as you guys know, is pharmacogenomics. And we have our guest coming on for the second time. We have Ku Yoo. Ku is an ethicist, and he spoke to us a little bit ago about some of the basics and the underpinnings of bioethics. But today we have him talking to us about pharmacogenomics.
This is the Darshan Talks podcast. Regulatory Guy, Irregular Podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. You can find the show on Twitter at Darshan Talks or the show's website at darshantalks.com.
Ku, maybe we can talk a little bit, first of all, for those of you who don't know, pharmacogenomics is when you use genetic testing to suggest that certain drugs may or may not be appropriate for certain types of patients and certain types of patient populations. Obviously, that has some ethical ramifications, some privacy ramifications, some social ramifications, and we'll talk about those in general right now. Obviously, we're not taking a position on anything. It doesn't represent anyone's employer's official views, but just conversations to have. So, Ku, have you ever had a 23andMe test done?
I have not yet done so.
What do you think about people who do these types of tests?
I mean, it's really curious, right? It's what we're made of, and we're trying to figure out what that is. So,
right.
There is certainly a big part of me that someday would want to try it.
And that really brings us to the question, there are some people who do try it and some people who don't.
Right.
In your opinion, does that impact whether that's ethically an appropriate impact on the results and the types of drugs that you'll test on people? Because obviously there's some research out there that says that more Caucasians have had these genetic tests done than African Americans or Asians.
Right. So I think that if you pose that question to one-on-one level, if I can figure out what your makeup is, therefore I can serve you better as a doctor, the answer is probably going to be a resounding yes, please. Right?
Yes, please, we should do it.
We should do it. Right?
Okay.
Because I can help you better.
Right.
But now when we're discussing this policy level, the population, what the right things are, things get a little more trickier in that it's not just the policy as it's intended, it's just a policy as it gets practiced.
Right.
And it impacts population at large. So if, to the extent that things like a 23andMe and other genetic testing is being used by a certain subpopulation of Americans, I suppose there's nothing wrong with it. It's voluntary.
Right.
But you could imagine if that is directly tied to well-being of our population because of the medical advances based upon the data they collect, then maybe we could lean on these companies for better advertising and reaching out to the other populations. Or maybe we'll find other entrepreneurs who would start a program that is geared towards that more than, say, currently it's being pushed as a mere curiosity.
Right.
Right? And then so it looks like it's an additional thing that you don't really have to do in life, but once it becomes more necessary, perhaps there'll be different ethical boundaries that we're testing at that point. And those are all the concerns that I'm sure that people are having.
Yeah, but now here's an interesting thing you said. You talked about how it's voluntary. Now, one of the key things they teach us in law school, as you know, is there's the actus rea and the mens rea.
Right.
And in the for those of you who don't know, actus rea is the actual act of doing things, and the mens rea is a thought process behind it. So we have the situation with 23andMe, and again, we're not specifically picking on 23andMe. They're just the most popular one, and they actually have certain evidence behind them. So we're not even going to go down that path. We're just exploring it as a concept. But in the case of 23andMe, there was a situation where they collected a whole bunch of people's data. They then sold it to GSK for $300 million. Here's the question. Now, a bunch of people are going to benefit from this because people are going to get access to certain clinical trial populations. They're going to get access to information that might ideally benefit them. So the question really is, was it an ethical action for 23andMe to sell the data? And if either way, how did you decide whether it is or isn't ethical?
Yeah, those are tough questions. to the extent that all of the things that we do that affect others has some ethical element to it, I suppose there is an ethical element to these. You purchase, I'm assuming GSK purchased so that it would benefit its drugs research.
I would hope so.
Right. And then whatever drugs that come out of it, if let's say that there was more data for a specific subgroup in the 23andMe data that they sold, then it perhaps could benefit that subgroup better,
Right.
more,
Right.
and then it could have an impact on what is being cured and what is not, or what is being ameliorated, right?
Right.
So yeah, in that larger sense, but I think that it would be difficult today to say that GSK was, for example, being unfair to those underrepresented populations within this private company's data set, which has been collected through people paying voluntarily for their testing. I think that, especially because this whole genetics being a medicine thing is so new,
Right.
right? But I do think that either the population as a whole, or the other people who are watchdogs, should think about, well, why aren't we? If there's real discrepancy,
Yeah.
then we should try to think as a society, maybe the advances should be made, for everybody's benefit.
To get better representation, if you will.
Yeah, if that's really necessary, if that has a correlation or effect of it, for sure. Yeah. But one of the I think, just tie back to the last talk. You could certainly see it as, well, this is a beneficial act because it's now going to benefit, regardless of what they look like or what subpopulation this data belongs to. More people will benefit, so therefore this is a right thing to do.
Right.
Or you could say, well, the creating a discrepancy is really an ethical act, and now you're making it harder for the others to be treated as well as some other groups may be. And if that's the standard, then you're gonna have to start balancing things out as a policy.
So a question that comes out of it is, there are two things that really reach out to me. And I'll ask the first question first and ask the second one second. The first question that I have is, one of the big arguments that came out and that there was a huge hue and cry about was when people signed up and went to 23andMe, their whole argument was, I just want to know who I'm related to. And I want to know ethnically where I came from. 23andMe, in its disclosure, full warning, they actually said that we plan to use it for other uses. The question is, we all know no one reads the agreements that you sign. Whose responsibility is it to actually read the agreement? Can you get informed consent? If it's written down, people can read it.
That to me is a bit of it's hard as a lawyer not to give a slightly legal answer. A lot of our actions in the area of law, there's an actual act and knowledge, but so much of it is really you should have known.
Yeah.
Or you should have done it this way.
Yeah.
Right. It seems, though, with the advent of digital communication, that so much of it is now falling on the consumer's lap rather than, right. There used to be concepts like contract adhesion, or like this is inadequate warning.
Yeah.
When it's too long, or right.
Right.
And they still exist in a specific dangerous consuming facing. I'm not a tort lawyer, but I as I understand that they still exist even in drugs world, in fact. But in a thing like that, I think that we just seem to be going more and more towards it now. Ultimately, and I think that we're getting to this point where this is new data.
Yeah.
And it is what we're made of. Right?
Absolutely.
And the way that we understand what we've discovered and we've been able to map out, it's supposed to be beneficial in a huge way.
Yep.
Right? I think that genie's not going back to the bottle. I think
Right.
that we're going to collect more and more and understand more and more what our genes do, what that data might help us. Hopefully, not so much hurt.
Okay, fair enough. So let's take a second version of that same question, which was you talked about how we only have data for example, primarily for the Caucasian population. If that's true, we're going to find out that certain genes are expressed in certain subpopulations. To me, that means that you're going to find that certain drugs are going to eventually come out that target those specific populations, which will be expressed more in the Caucasian population. Does that mean that there's less access, you think? Because now you're going to have, in the case of drugs, you have things like REMS, for example, which says this is a specific population, there are specific risks associated with it, therefore you can only approve the drug and dispense the drug for this population. If you're looking at expression of specific genes in those specific populations, does that mean you're going to start excluding patients, primarily because of where your origination data started?
I mean, I can see a future where a specific type of drug or a specific drug would, in fact, be only useful and possibly harmful for people that don't have specific type of gene being expressed in their
right,
regardless of their background.
Yeah.
So that's and ultimately, I mean, honestly, when I said when a patient and doctor is talking one-on-one,
yeah,
outside of policy making, whether if I can understand your specific makeup of your genes,
yeah,
I could help you. That's where we are. If we're just talking about one-on-one,
right,
I like to know that drug, please don't use it on me.
Right.
Right. Now the question that you're asking is obviously, well, if we have because the data available right now only is allowing us to develop better drugs for only a subgroup of the population, is there a problem with that?
Right.
Again, I think that because of we're in the infancy of it, I think that better drugs in any form is better than no drugs that are better.
So you'd rather have drugs that are more drugs out there to benefit patients than lack of drugs is your potential.
Right,
position.
like let's go the other way. Let's say that we had 100% understanding of what each of the genes do and how to formulate drugs to help people.
Yeah.
It's just that now it's a data collection problem.
Right.
Then I would say that the onus is on the society or these companies to reach out to the underrepresented population so that we can help everybody, right?
Yeah.
But because we're so much in the beginning stage of it, we're just trying to understand what this data mean.
Yeah.
That I don't know that we could. It would be a little bit unfair to currently point finger. It is let's have a warning flag up. Hey guys, this is skewed one way right now.
Yeah.
But please go ahead and do what you can to understand more about what's going on, because if I were a betting person, dollars to donuts, whatever we understand out of that process is hopefully going to help all the rest of the humans, and it's going to be scientific advances.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I'm not. I don't want to put up a warning of this is unethical potentially, but it is giving. You can see that you can go down sort of to the fullest logical extent. It might come out to be this weird discriminatory problem, right? So it's good to have an eye on it, but I think that to stop science of this nature because of it seems a little premature as well.
Interesting. So there's a school of thought, and this is a school of thought espoused by the FDA. I'm not quite sure why I'm using big words like espouse, but we'll get over that part. But there's a school of thought that the FDA takes, which says that if you're going to put information out there, and it is how should we put this? It is not completely validated. Patients might make treatment decisions and might change their own therapy because of information that they've received. What do you say to someone like that who's saying, because there's the possibility, we simply shouldn't collect that data and or dispense that data because it's not completely validated yet?
I can understand that point of view, but people collect data. People. I think that we've always understood science as could be used for the benefit of the people or for the destruction of the people.
Absolutely.
Weapons technology is a very good example of it.
I'd like to think weapons have very little benefit of people, but
Well, I cook a lot. I like really sharp knives.
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I know we're not talking about nuclear weapons at this point, but so there's.
I want to know what dish you make with nuclear weapons.
But so I think that again, it's something we should be aware of, but there's always going to be people who are going to try to harm others.
Yeah.
Or just to gain more power, influence, money, whatever the case may be, whether that's harmful or not. But I don't know that. I don't know that we've had any experience successfully stopping technological advances because we're worried about that. Anyway, in the long run.
Yeah.
And two, I think that ultimately discovery is our bias.
Right.
Right? So I think we're going to get there. Now, if the argument is, hey, we don't have the ability to control what we're getting,
Yeah.
can we slow down, or can we, maybe I can see some of the worries.
Yeah.
But if the worry is that it's going to hurt some people, then I don't know that that's an argument we're ever going to win. Whether I agree with whichever side,
Yeah.
I think that our bias is always going to come out to be discovering more.
Fascinating. No, I can see that position for sure. So obviously we can spend a lot of time discussing this further, but I want to take this opportunity to thank Ku. We're probably going to have him back to do other talks. Would you come back again?
Of course. This is very fun.
This was great. Thank you again, guys. Stay tuned. We're going to have some really interesting talks coming up soon. We have a clinician who's going to talk to us, and we'll listen to more about what they have in mind and if they think pharmacogenomics is a good idea. So stay tuned. This is going to be exciting. Take care.
This is the Darshan Talks podcast, regulatory guy, irregular podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. You can find the show on Twitter at Darshan Talks or the show's website at darshantalks.com.